Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Dear faculty member and students, we are here to get an insight on Riyasate Madina, its background, barrier, and way forward. I'm thankful to you for your presence here. I'm highly obliged to HOD Management Sciences and other faculty members for supporting this activity for the sake of our knowledge and concept building. We are fortunate today that we have amongst us Professor Dr. Asad Zaman Saab as a guest speaker for today's session. Dr. Asad Zaman Saab is a world-renowned economist, educationalist, and social scientist. Professor Dr. Asad Zaman Saab has done PhD in economics from Stanford University, MS in statistics from Stanford University, and BS in mathematics from MIT. He held many key positions throughout his career. Currently, he is Vice Chancellor of PIDE, which means Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, and he is advisor to Prime Minister for Economic Affairs. Earlier to this status, Dr. Asad Zaman had been Director General, International Islamic University, Islamabad. He was professor at LUMS, associate professor at Johns Hopkins University, professor at Bilken University, associate professor Columbia University, assistant professor University of Pennsylvania, visiting professor at AERC University of Karachi, visiting professor California Institute of Technology, and visiting professor University Catholic de Lyon, Belgium. He has more than 80 publications, including 2 books. One of them is Statistical Foundations for Econometrics Techniques, and the another one is Islamic Economics, a Survey of the Literature. Memberships, posts, and honors he earned in his career are Director, DFID. He was elected to the Council of the Econometric Society. He had been a chairman 2002 Southeast Asian Religion Econometric Society meeting held at LUMS. He had been a governor of Board of Governor in the Board of Governor, Pakistan Bureau of Statistics. He has been invited as an expert and subject specialist at various international conferences such as that had been held in Cyprus, Turkey, India, England, Netherlands, Malaysia, Iran, Indonesia. His area of expertise are econometrics theory, econometric methodology, Islamic economics, economic methodology and development, and Islamic banking. Professor Zaman is a down-to-earth personality and a mesmerizing speaker. His talks are highly intellectual and thought-provoking. He avoids mere motivational and emotional discussions. Dr. Zaman is proponent of the view that social sciences should be built around Islamic principles. Today, Professor Dr. Asad Zaman Saab is going to deliver a talk on the concept of Riyasate Madina, its background, barrier, and the way forward. And before inviting our honorable guest, I would like to recite some verses of the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا ليطاع بإذن الله ولو أنهم إذ ظلموا أنفسهم جاءوك فاستغفروا الله واستغفر لهم الرسول فاستغفروا الله واستغفر لهم الرسول لوجدوا الله توابا رحيما فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. I would request you to pay attention to the translation. Actually, the translation of these ayat actually gives the clear concept of Riyasate Madina. ترجمہ میں یوں ہے کہ ہم نے ہر رسول کو صرف اس لیے بھیجا کہ اللہ کے حکم سے ان کی فرما برداری کی جائے. رسولوں کو اس لیے بھیجا کہ لوگ ان کے پیچھے چلیں، اور اگر یہ لوگ جب انہوں نے اپنی جانوں پر ظلم کیا، گناہ کیے، آپ کے پاس آ جاتے اور اللہ تعالیٰ سے استغفار کرتے اور رسول بھی ان کے لیے استغفار کرتے، تو یقیناً یہ لوگ اللہ رب العزت کو معاف کرنے والا مہربان پاتے. تو اللہ کی قسم یہ لوگ مومن شمار نہیں ہوں گے، یہ لوگ مومن شمار نہیں کیے جائیں گے جب تک کہ تمام آپس کے اختلافات میں اللہ کے رسول کو حاکم نہ مان لے. پھر جو فیصلے اللہ کے رسول کریں ان سے اپنے دل میں کسی طرح کی تنگی اور ناخوشی نہ پائیں، اور فرما برداری کے ساتھ اللہ کے رسول کی باتوں کو قبول کریں. So now I would request Honorable guest speaker Professor Dr. Asad Zaman Sahab to please give us enlightenment on the topic of Riyasate Madina. Jazakumullah khair.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. یہ تم اس سے بھی آپریٹ کر سکتا ہوں؟ نہیں ٹھیک ہے. I'd like to be here. I'd rather be here. The topic is deep and difficult, and actually on Friday I spoke to my class in preparation for this talk, and it was 2 hours in which I discussed some of the points which have been outlined. On Sunday I gave this talk at the IBA and I compressed it to 1 hour, but lots of points that we will cover I will cover only very briefly, and so the issues are far more complex and require much more in-depth discussion. So we are going to try to put some oceans into some drops. So let us with the most important question which all of us face today. Sayyid Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi has written this book called Insani Duniya Par Musalmanon Ke Uruj Aur Zawal Ka Asar, and in this book you see that at the time of the coming of Islam, the whole world was in darkness. The Arabs were the most backward people. The wahi starts with the words اقرأ بسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Now I don't have time to discuss the depths of this, which could be take books, but here Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is sitting in a cave looking for his creator, looking for the guidance. And so Allah Ta'ala sends His angel, and Allah Ta'ala is introducing Himself. Who am I? Allah Ta'ala has infinite characteristics which cannot be contained in oceans of ink. So Allah Ta'ala introduces Himself as the one, Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam, who gives knowledge to man which he did not have. So Allah Ta'ala is introducing Himself as the teacher. Now, just step backwards and think about the effect that this knowledge had on the course of history. And this is exactly what is written in this book. That suddenly the tides of history changed. This knowledge which was given to ignorant and backwards Arabs who were living with savage customs like burying their own daughters alive and killing each other for trifling things and having many other customs of Jahiliyyah. These people became the most civilized people in the world. They started feeding each other when they were themselves hungry, according to the testimony of the Quran. The love between them that was created, these were tribes that were warring with each other for centuries and they were killing each other. And then Allah Ta'ala says that remember when you were enemies and I put the love in your hearts, and all the gold in the world could not have purchased that love. So these teachings were very precious, and they lifted the ignorant and savage Arabs to the leadership of the world, and it launched a civilization. It was not just a one-shot phenomenon. For 1,000 years, this civilization gave arts, literature, philosophy, sciences, and all dimensions of human life were enriched by this, and these teachings affected all others, even those outside Islam, like Europe and China and Africa. Everywhere the effect of the light of Islam reached. So now, to ask is, does Islam have the same power today? Because today, if we look at the world around us, the conditions are very similar to the Jahiliyyah. Everything that used to happen in the Jahiliyyah you can find, including the killing of your own children. In USA, my daughter is working at a medical school, and routinely parents come in with children who have been, not parents usually, it's single parent families are now in the majority, and children who have been basically killed or tortured or otherwise abused by their parents are just so common, it's hard to believe. So just the meaning is that the Jahiliyyah is all over, including the Muslims. The Muslims today have nothing left. It was said in Hadith that Islam came as a stranger and will become a stranger. So in all dimensions of our life, we don't have Islam. We don't have, our governance is according to democratic system, our economics is according to Jewish system, and our society is fashioned along alien cultural lines, and in every dimension, education, any dimension you take it, there is no Islam left. So today the world is in darkness, and today the same values, in the Jahiliyyah the concept was that might is right. Today the same concept prevails. Today the USA, because it has the power to do so, it can destroy Iraq and Libya and functioning countries with absolutely any high levels of development. They were bombed back to the Stone Ages. Millions of innocents were killed. Hospitals and schools and factories destroyed. And nobody said a word there, because they have the power, they have the right. But if somebody doesn't have power, if you have 2 or 3 Muslims and they set off a bomb somewhere and kill 10 people, this is in the whole world newspapers, and the entire Muslim civilization is held to blame for this. So today might is right. What is good, what was once considered bad, when in the 1970s I went to the USA for my studies, homosexuality was considered a very bad thing. People would be very afraid and embarrassed to talk about this in the public, and it was listed on the books as a crime. If somebody was caught doing it, he could be put in jail, and it was listed in the book of psychological diseases as something that needed a psychological treatment. In the 1990s, everything is 100% opposite. Now, if somebody speaks against homosexuality, he can be put into jail. It is now considered as a normal thing. It is not psychologically abnormal, and it is socially acceptable to react to it, to display displeasure about it is considered a crime. In Canada, they are teaching a book which is called My Chacha is Gay. It is designed for Pakistanis and Muslims because we are very intolerant and bigoted people and narrow-minded. So we have to open up our minds. And if parents refuse to allow their children to attend those sessions, then they can be punished for this. They can be actually jailed for this. So what was once considered good in our time, and even in the 1970s in the USA, if a girl became pregnant out of wedlock, she would be very embarrassed and she would commit suicide, just like Bibi Maryam is written about in the Quran. This was possible, but today the presidential candidates or the president's daughter is pregnant and unmarried, and nobody says anything. More, वो तो वहाँ की बात है. Here, the same transformation is taking place. The same kind of changes. When I was young, when I was your age, a doctor would not be able to say in public that I am studying this so that I can take advantage of people who are sick and helpless and make money from this process. But today, if a student sits up and says that I am studying medicine in order to serve humanity, people will laugh. In the schools, it used to be written, there were two gates. One was the entry gate, and it said enter to learn and leave to serve on the out gate. Now it is written enter to learn and leave to earn. So the goal of life, which was once the service of mankind, has now become the making of money. This has had disastrous results. We have been taught, we are now living in a culture which is based on a market society where everything is for sale and everyone is working for his own benefit, and the only thing which matters is the dollar. So if you have a beautiful forest with trees and birds and very unusual flora and fauna, the only thing that the market sees is that there is some timber here which can be used to make furniture, and that can make profits. So the fact that this forest took billions of years to make and you could not recreate in another billion of years, this doesn't matter. The only thing which matters is that you can chop it up and use it for making some money. So today we are living on the brink of disaster. There is environmental collapse. Millions have been killed in wars for profits. Today, Muslims are under the delusion that the West hates Islam, and they are actually, it's all about money. If it is profitable for for them to love Islam, then they will do so, like they did in Afghanistan when they were fighting against Russia. And when it is more profitable to hate Islam, then they will do that. So it's all about money. The religion really is irrelevant. So all of this is next to the question that today we are in darkness. The Muslims also have been influenced and contaminated by these poisons which are widespread, that our lives are about pleasure, about money, about fame, about popularity. And so today the good Muslim thinks that what Islam means is that we pursue our pleasure and money and all of the same things that the West is doing, but we should do so by halal means. That is what Islam means. So the object of life, the purpose of life for us is the same as the purpose of life for the average Western student or person. The only difference is that we are constrained. We cannot use all means, haram and halal. We can only use halal means. So today we are living in darkness. So the question is, does Islam have the same power today that it did 1400 years ago when it led Muslims from the bottom to the top? Can Islam do the same thing? So as Muslims, we must say yes. And there is no choice. That is what the faith tells us. But all our actions and our actual thinking, there is lip service that we pay to Islam in all dimensions, but the reality is very different. So today all our actions and thoughts say no, Islam is not complete and is not sufficient. Today, if we want to progress, we have to follow the West. The secular people say that we just follow the West, forget about Islam. The Islamic people say that we have to Islamize their knowledge. The question then becomes, is the Quran perfect and complete? Quran itself says that Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa razitu lakum al-Islam dina. So Quran says that it is complete and perfect. This akmal, this is a very, it has two meanings. One is kamal, which is perfection, excellence, and the other is mukammal, which is complete. So there is nothing missing from it, and it is perfect. But today, our typical belief is we think that the Quran is not complete. Lots of things have been left out which we need today for our guidance and development. Everything that was done in the past 3 centuries by the Europe, that we need today to learn, and there is no way to be developed without that. So it's not complete, and it's also not perfect. There are some mistakes in it, like interest was prohibited and many other issues that are not compatible with the modern world. So we need to change those a little bit in order to make it work. So today we are very far from the message of Islam. As we have said, Islam has become a stranger. Islam teaches us to seek knowledge from the cradle to grave, and the message starts with Iqra, but the Ummah is largely illiterate. And today the Ummah believes that the path to development does not lie in the implementation of the orders of Allah. It lies in the hands of the foreign expert. We need to learn what IMF and World Bank and Harvard have to teach, and there is no other path to development. So all our individual efforts, what we are trying to do, both on a personal level and on a collective level, how we can become developed, why we are underdeveloped, is that the path to the road to development lies through the Western knowledge. And Quran is definitely not the path to development. That is obsolete. It was good for us 1400 years ago, but now the message has been is no longer relevant, valid, important for us today. So, when we talk about Riyasate Madina, it should be clear that we cannot get to Medina by following the Washington consensus, which is what we are trying to do today. Allah Ta'ala says that Hadainahun Najdain, we have shown him the two highways of good and evil. And Laisa lil insani illa ma sa'a. So we get what we strive for. So if we are trying to turn our country into New York and Paris and London, then we cannot make it into Medina as well. These are opposite directions. So فَمَنْ شَاءَ اتَّخَذَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِ سَبِيلًا. So if we want to seek the pathway to our Lord, that is one direction, but there is other directions also. So the question then becomes, why has Islam become a stranger to the Muslims? Why are today we are looking for foreign experts to guide us to the road to Medina even? When supposedly, technically, we have complete and perfect guidance with us. So I would like to say that the reason for this is that we are trapped in a problem which I call the modern Mu'tazila. And this is very important to understand. So let me explain what the first Mu'tazila were. So when the Arabs came out of the desert and they occupied the seats of power in the world, they came into contact with Greek philosophy, which was very complex and sophisticated and subtle. And the Arabs were very simple people, desert dwellers. They were very extremely impressed with this philosophy. And so there was a group which said, and this was the Mu'tazila, they said that the aql is on par with wahi. So if we derive something by using our reason, then it should be considered as equivalent to what is revealed knowledge. And on the surface, it makes a lot of sense. They said, the argument they used was that we use our aql to understand the Quran. So without the aql, we can't even understand the Quran. So we must take the aql as fundamental. And if something is told to us by aql, then we must accept it on the same level of certainty as the Quran. Now, the problem was that by aql they did not mean simple logic, they meant Greek philosophy. So the demand was that Greek philosophy should be given the same status as the Quran, and this was widely accepted. And the king, I think it was Harun al-Rashid, he enforced it. And Imam Abu Hanifa resisted it, and he refused, and he was actually whipped for this, for refusing to obey the king on this particular matter. So today we have exactly the same problem. Today, now, I can give you hundreds of examples. When there is a proposition from Samuelson and it is in conflict with the Quran, then the people accept the Samuelson and they reinterpret the Quran to match. So today our biggest problem is that we cannot access the Quran because we use the filters of Western knowledge which we have been trained in for years and years, and we have absorbed these ideas. So Iqbal says कि खीरा न कर सका मुझे जलवा दानिश फरंग सुरमा है मेरी आँख का खाके मदीना और नजफ. So Iqbal have escaped, but the rest of us have not. And our eyes have been blinded by the brilliance of Western knowledge, and they are unable to see the nur of the Quran. So how did this happen? This is very important to understand. How did it happen that we became dazzled by Western knowledge and we abandoned the Quran, and we are now following in all dimensions of our life, we are following Western guidance, whether it's how to govern, whether it's how to run trade, whether it's international trade, whether it's monetary system, whether it's educational system, in all systems we are following Western pathways. So it happened because there was a process of colonization. Now there is a huge literature and discussion, and I have to shortcut this and say that in the early 20th century, Europeans had colonized about 85% of the globe. And now one very important thing to understand is that colonization does not work by physical force. It works by conquest of the minds. Karl Marx said that capitalism works not by forcing the laborer to work for the capitalist, but by making the laborer a willing accomplice. Similarly, colonization works by the consent of the colonized. Today, the poorest countries in the world are paying billions of dollars every year to the richest countries. So the colonization is exactly the same today as it was in the 20th century before so-called independence. But now we are just willingly giving the money to those who are formerly the colonizers. Formerly there was a physical force that was there, but today there is no physical force. We do it all by our own selves. So why is it that we do this? This is because our minds have been colonized. We consent to a system of exploitation because we have been fed the wrong theories about what it means to develop, how the economy should be run, what the purpose of our lives is, which is to make money according to capitalism. So the hadith says that there will become a time when the Muslims will be very large in number, but the kuffar will gather over them like people gather over a feast. And the reason for this will be that there will be a disease in the hearts of the mu'min, and this disease will be the love of dunya and the fear of death. And these are exactly the main messages of the secular modern way of life, which is now enveloping the world, and the ideas are spread by all means, by the education that you are receiving, by the social media, by novels, books, newspapers. Everything is giving us the same message, that eat, drink and be merry. No one knows what will happen after death. So even the Muslims are living exactly in this manner. And Allah Ta'ala says that this is a weakness of the human being, that he خلق الإنسان عجولا. His actions are based on what he sees in the near future. He doesn't think too much about the distant future, what will happen after death. So the central problem of the Ummah is a deep-seated inferiority complex, which makes us disregard our heritage. We don't even know what our heritage was, and instead we believe and trust and have confidence in, and we look towards the West as superior. Even the use of the word, that they are developed and we are underdeveloped, is a reflection of this inferiority complex.
So एक ईमेल की तरफ आते हैं, जमील जफर लाहौर से ईमेल करते हैं, उनका कहना है कि हम साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी में बेशक पीछे हैं, लेकिन अखलाकी इक़दार में हम वेस्ट से बहुत आगे हैं।
1 minute clip.
अखलाकी इक़दार का तल्लुक आपके लिबास के साथ नहीं, कि शलवार पहना है, स्कर्ट पहना है, आप समझ रहे हो, आपने ब्लाउज पहना है या कमीज पहना है, इसका ताल्लुक बताऊं?
Clothing doesn't matter.
फलाना सोमो सलाद का बड़ा पाबंद, उन्होंने कहा छोड़ो इसको, तो मामलात में बताओ कैसा है। तो हमारे यहाँ तो कोई ढंग की चीज है ही नहीं। अल्लाह माफ करे, ये गला सड़ा हुआ मुआशरा है जिसके पल्ले नदामत भी नहीं रह गई। एक तो होता है ना लेवल कि बंदा नादिम हो, मैं गिनाता हूं चंद चीजें। पूरी पूरी दुनिया, मुहज्जब दुनिया में इसका आपको हजारवां हिस्सा भी इस गंदगी का नजर आए, मैं अपनी गर्दन काट के आपके हुजूर खुद पेश कर दूंगा। सुनते जाओ आप। कम तोलना, मिलावट, झूठी गवाही, अदालतें जाके देखो, ढेर लगे हुए हैं पेशावर गवाहों के, ठीक, जखीरा अंदोज, तजारत, नाजायज मुनाफाखोरी, सरकारी और निजी जमीनों पे कब्जा, पूरे मुल्क के जंगल बेच के खा गया टिम्बर माफिया, मसनूई महंगाई, ब्लैक मार्केटिंग, गंदा दूध, जाली दवाइयां, जाली पासपोर्ट, जाली जातें, जाली वीजे, बकरों को हलाल करके तकबीर पढ़ने के बाद गंदा पानी इंजेक्ट करते हैं। तुम्हारे डॉक्टर हड़ताल करते हैं, तो अखलाकियात की बात, कौन सी अखलाकियात, पल्ले क्या है? मुहज्जब दुनिया में जाके कहो, पूछो कहीं ये दूध में मिलावट तो नहीं, उनको तुम्हारी बात समझ नहीं आएगी। आप उधर जाके बात करो, ये जो जाली दवा तो नहीं है। आप यकीन करो, वो समझने से उनको, उनके गुमान में भी नहीं कि कोई शैतान और इब्लीस जाली दवा भी बना सकता है, दूध में मिलावट भी कर सकता है। जो किसकी खुराक है? आपके बच्चे। वो समझने से उनको, उनके गुमान में भी नहीं कि कोई शैतान और इब्लीस जाली दवा भी बना सकता है, दूध में मिलावट भी कर सकता है। जो किसकी खुराक है? आपके बच्चे।
So this was I recorded this because such a pure example of inferiority complex is very difficult to find these days. Yani, most people have more sense than this. But this is just to show, this is a famous TV personality and he shows up on TV. So it's not that this view has been completely wiped out like the dinosaurs. I used to think that there would be no one so extremely impressed that he's saying that basically the West is angels. They don't even know how to lie. Even the concept of lying does not exist in their culture. When Trump is telling lies every day according to their own press, and mixtures and impure drugs and this is, all of this is very, very common. But he believes that they are angels and we are just completely degenerate. But the question is, how did a man come to think like this? This is very important to understand, because although he represents 100% inferiority complex, we are all infected. Maybe somebody has only 10%, maybe somebody has 25%, maybe somebody, but everybody is infected by this view. So it's not that we are free from it, but it's nice to have a pure form to understand, because that's the extreme. So actually, to understand, we have to understand the origins of ideas. Was it always the case from the beginning that we have thought that we are just nothing and we are worms? Actually, some time ago there was an incident in Pakistan where some person was beaten to death, and so some journalist wrote that we are a nation of cockroaches. So this is the thing that the Germans also killed millions of Jews and burned them in ovens, but they never said that we are a nation of cockroaches. So this sort of self denigration, the having a very low sense of self-esteem, how did this, has it always been this way? No, this is the result of colonization. In order to understand, to be able to free ourselves from the conquest of our minds, we have to go and untangle the historical cords which led us to this path. We can, if we retrace through the path which led us to this, then we can free ourselves from these invisible chains which bind. So we have to think, what was colonization process? It was that, what it really was, and there's a very long and complex and detailed history, I'll compress it to one sentence, that the industrialization process allowed the West to create a huge amount of surplus goods. And at that time there were self-sufficient countries all over the world, and self-sufficiency was considered a virtue. So the Europeans had these extra goods, but they could not sell them because all the countries ran self-sufficient economies. So they had to come in and they had to destroy the economy, they had to take over by force, they had to kill, murder, rape, loot. They did everything in the process of very, very savage and barbaric colonization of the world. But more than that, and the important part is they did all of this, but they had to make it appear as if it was moral. The example for this is the invasion of Iraq. When the US invaded Iraq, they did not say that we are going there to take over their oil. In fact, people accused them of this and they said, no, of course, we have no interest in Iraqi oil. Official statements denying the role of oil. Instead, what did they say? They said that, there is an evil dictator, he is oppressing his people, so we are going there to free the people, to give them democracy. He has these weapons of mass destruction and they are a threat to the world, so we are going in there as saviors of the world. So what is being said and what is the reality are diametrically opposite. So exactly like this, when the Europeans went out to colonize the world, they had to invent justifications, a high moral ground to cover up the truth. And what was the high moral ground? It was that, we are the most advanced and civilized race on the planet. And this is part of the poison that we have swallowed, the Eurocentric history, that actually mankind started thinking with the European Enlightenment. Before that, no one knew how to think. Science is an exclusive product of European minds. Nobody else knows anything about science. And governance and democracy and all good things currently known to man were invented in Europe. And that is why this myth, which we have swallowed through our textbooks, is what leads us to believe that today the only path to development lies through acquisition of Western knowledge. So this idea, that we are the most advanced civilization on the planet, and we must, and so we went to Asia and jungles of Africa, we left our comfortable homes and did this out of the sense of mission that we have been given these great things and we must share them with the planet. So this was the cover story. And unfortunately, they believed this cover story and we also believed this cover story, that before the English came, we were living in trees and we didn't know how to read and write, and they came and civilized us, and we learned how to eat with fork and spoon, and we learned how to behave in a civilized manner. We were just barbarians. So this is where Hassan Nisar is coming from, because this is the Eurocentric myth which he has swallowed, that we were complete barbarians and they are the most civilized. So I've gone through this. Actually, the process for colonization was not just physical force. Explicit use was made of psychological tactics to destroy our self-confidence, and we still suffering from the results. The kings, the governors, put Sultan Tipu's dress on their orderlies, and so when we would go and visit them, we would see, our kings are their servants. And imagine, the heart, what an effect this would have on your heart, that our kings are their servants. This is so obvious as a symbolism. So there were not one, many tactics were used to break our spirit, and this is true today. Today I have met not one, many people who, in solving our problems with Pakistan, they say, let's call in a foreign expert, even though they know 10 times more than the foreign expert does, and the foreign expert knows nothing, and frequently they come in and ruin the place. But we don't have the confidence. Today, if we want to solve, we ask what are the 10 problems of Pakistan, we will say, okay, let's ask the IMF team, even though all of us have, and also if you look at the Washington Consensus or the IMF program, and you list their top 20 priorities, okay, get your deficit down, balance your taxes, do this, that and the other. And if you think with your own mind about the problems of Pakistan, which is the key thing we refuse to do, you will find that the top 100 problems don't have any overlap with the 20 issues that they mention as being our problems. So today we are solving wrong sets of problems, and we don't have the right priorities, even though we know what the priorities are. If we were to sit down and talk and discard our Western knowledge and wo jo chamak hai Maghribi ulum ki usko avoid kare, and we just think, okay, what are the problems we need to solve, we could make up a list of 100 problems, and they would have nothing in common with what the foreign expert would tell us about our economy. And these would be right, but we don't have the confidence. Today, if I have a fight with my wife, I will go and ask the Western psychologist how to resolve this issue. Check out the WhatsApp. Yes. So, in particular, the most important of the elements which were used to destroy us psychologically was Macaulay's education system, which was designed to create people, it's very explicit, who would worship the West and who would hate their heritage and who would feel an inferiority complex and who would say that, our fathers were ignorant barbarians. Just like, if Iraq had been conquered by the USA and they had implemented education, the children of Iraq would say, yes, our forefathers were ignorant barbarians, and these people came and they civilized us and gave us education and so on. So in Iraq they failed, so they know that they had a great civilization which was destroyed by America. But today, because we were conquered, we have swallowed the wrong story. And this continues today. Today in Beacon House, my daughter came home and our teacher told us that, their streets are clean and they are civilized, and look at our streets, they're all dirty, and we are just backwards people and they are forwards people. So this is being taught in our schools today, the same Macaulay education. So how can we free our minds from this colonization? See, currently we are talking about Riyasate Madina, but we are so in shock and awe of the West that we cannot even see the road to Medina. So there are, at one time I tried to make a list of all of the myths that we are fed in the course of our Western education, and after listing 20 I gave up. There are so many that it's impossible to actually count them. But these are 5 big issues that I thought that I would just bring to mind as a starter, and you have to work on this project on your own. So let me just go through them. So the project before us that I would like as an outcome of this seminar is that we begin the process of freeing our minds from the conquest. Although the political freedom we have achieved in 1947, but our minds are still enslaved, and the process by which they are enslaved is Western education, which you are now receiving. And I will explain why. And this poison is slipped in without any knowledge. It's like it's mixed into the water, and you're not aware of the poisons that you are swallowing. So it's even worse. I mean, if it was explicit, then it would be easier to combat. You would be able to see, like if there is a white governor, then we see that we are being ruled by an alien race. But when the governors are the coconut class, they are brown on the outside but white on the inside. Exactly, the coconut class is the creation of his education. And that's what he said. These people will be brown on the outside, but their hearts will be full of love and reverence for the West. Their Medina will be in Washington and their Mecca will be in London. So Eurocentric history, this is one of the points that we have absorbed. Let me just... So what is the basic principle? This thing is never taught to us explicitly, but it is part of the subtext of everything that we read. That basically the world was in darkness until the European Enlightenment. When the history started in 16th century. Before that, there is nothing worth mentioning. The human beings did not do anything interesting or worthwhile until the 16th century Europe. So actually this narrative we have solved it. We have to know the counter narrative in order to be able to combat this. So the truth is really surprising. This is something, what is surprising to me is that I had to discover it for myself, because it is not available in any of the standard texts. But it's so obvious that it's hard to understand how you can deny. It's just like denying the sun is up and saying it's midnight when the sun is shining. So history started with actually the advent of Islam was a revolution in history, and you can there is so much evidence for this that nobody can deny it. And fair-minded historians in West, East, everywhere have acknowledged the powerful message of the Islam and how it changed the course of history and how it launched this civilization which has been remarkable. So the point is that how did Europe become enlightened? We all know that they were living in dark ages, Middle Ages, and then suddenly the sun rose, the sun of reason. But they never mention why the sun of reason rose in the 16th century. It just happened spontaneously. Actually, what happened was that the civilization of Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, was extremely advanced, and Muslims had been there for 700 years, which is much longer than the European have been in power today. And as Ibn Khaldun wrote, every civilization goes through a cycle in which they are young and vigorous, and then they become mature, and then they become senile, and they wallow in luxury, and they become degenerate. And this is exactly what happened in the last periods of the Islamic Spain. In fact, a novelist writes that the Europeans declared war, and in the king's court they were writing poetry about how we are going to be so heroic in battle tomorrow instead of preparing their arms. So this is the thing that they were. They lost the battle. And what happened was that the West gained access to millions of millions of books in the libraries of the Muslims. And the next 2 centuries, 1492 is the fall of Granada last, and then basically 16th century and 17th century, Europe was struggling with all of this flood of knowledge which was contained in the books. So it was the light of the Quran. There is the book called the Enlightenment Quran, which shows the effect of the Quran on the thinkers of Europe. And it was not just the Quran, all the books which Muslims had gathered from all over the world, they actually transformed. This was the light which came. So it was the light of Islam which rose in Europe. And many people who are fair-minded have understood and explained this. And Jefferson's Quran is a recent book which shows how Jefferson was inspired by the Quran, and basically in writing the Constitution, many of the enlightened elements of tolerance and freedom come from Islamic values directly, and they were opposed to what was a very narrow-minded Christian intolerant mentality which was dominant. But Jefferson, because he was inspired by the Quran, he wrote the Constitution in the way that. So the key point here is The Theft of History, which is a book by Jack Goody, which says that the European civilization took products from many different civilizations and they renamed them. They put European origins on them. So this is one of the reasons for our inferiority complex, because Europeans borrowed things from everybody, including massive borrowings from Islamic civilization, and they never named those things, and they took the credit for them themselves. So now we think that everything was invented by Europeans, including, most amazingly, the so-called Copernican revolution. So it is now known that Copernicus had this book by Ibn Shatir, which basically was a translator. But because the European church was extremely intolerant of all Muslim influence, So even though if he wanted to, he could not acknowledge Muslim sources, and he was not the only one. Many other people copied from Islam, but they could not acknowledge Islamic sources because the church would persecute them. This was what the Inquisition was about. It was trying to prevent the influx of Islamic ideas which would be in conflict with Catholic. And basically the church broke up eventually, even though they tried very hard to prevent the coming of Islamic ideas. Eventually this is still called the Battle of Science and Religion. But what is the science? The science was the flood of Islamic knowledge. All of the science that they learned come from Ibn al-Haytham and many other people who advanced the sciences. Newton, when he said that I stood on the shoulder of giants, nobody mentions that these giants were giants of the Islamic civilization that he was making progress on. The laws of motion and all of the things that he did, they had all existed including calculus, quadratic equations, everything was there in the Cartesian coordinates, which is very fundamental to analytic geometry today. This was invented in Islam, and Descartes had little to do with it. In fact, in his writings, you cannot find any description of this Cartesian coordinate. So this is the theft of history, taking ideas from others and renaming it to your own. And this has a damaging effect on us because we think that our ancestors never did anything, and so it makes it difficult for us to aspire to have high aspirations, because if nobody in our generations ever did anything, then how can we reach the stars? So the Eurocentric history is a very damaging idea that we have swallowed. The second extremely damaging idea that is in the subtext of the books that we study is that there is no purpose of life, because in the West they rejected the Christianity, and with that they rejected all religion. They never bothered to examine whether there is some other religion. They said Christianity is wrong, and that was true. I mean, Christianity was in a very bad shape, so it was a very logical move for them to reject Christianity. But they never bothered to look at other religions. They said that Christianity is wrong, all religions are wrong, without ever actually examining them. So there are many conversion stories you can find on YouTube where people say that, well, I started searching and I didn't bother to look at Islam because that's so obviously hopelessly wrong that it's not even worth looking at. But eventually, after looking at Islam, they realize, oh, so this is the truth. And all sorts of puzzles which Christians struggle with today. They are writing books about why bad things happen to good people. So they are still puzzled, and they have this idea that bad is created by shaitan and good is created by Allah Ta'ala, which is explicitly denied in the Quran. Allah Ta'ala is all powerful. All the good and all the bad that happens to you, all comes from Allah. So this is then again is puzzling. How can Allah Ta'ala do bad things? So now we have a very clear and comprehensive and detailed answer to this, but they don't. So even today, Christianity does not have an explanation for why bad things can happen to good people. So when the Zalzala happened here, many psychologists came and they were astonished at how the people accepted that, okay, this happened from Allah. They were looking for trauma which happens to people when they suffer extreme tragedies, and they found that the people did not have the same trauma, because the faith tells us that this dunya is temporary and all the tragedies in this dunya are nothing compared to the tragedy of hellfire, and all of us must die one day. So all of these things which religion gives us, they don't have. So the Western mindset is that this universe was created by accident, human life was created by accident, and the European philosophers lost their faith in religion, and nearly all major social thinkers in the West, they had nervous breakdowns, because the loss of faith is a tragic event. You can find many evidence. So Albert Camus says that there is only one serious philosophical question, and that is suicide. And if life is completely meaningless, should we bother to live it, or should we just end it? Because if man came into being by existence by accident, and life will end by accident, it's all completely meaningless. So this is taught to you in your Western education. How? By lack of mention. You are taught about how to solve a quadratic equation. You are taught about the formula for water, but the purpose of life is never mentioned. It means that this question is of no significance, no importance. It's not as important as the quadratic equation. So now this is actually a deception. Yani, it's not that we start by Islam. Actually, Aristotle and Plato and every serious philosopher has discussed this question, including those who have said that life is meaningless. So let's put them on the table. Let's take Jean-Paul Sartre, who is an existentialist, and he says that life is meaningless and we create meaning. Let's look at his arguments. Let's look at what Plato has to say. Let's look at what Islam has to say, and make our own decision instead of force feeding. Basically, I have come to the conclusion that Western education is a form of brainwashing, because the teacher knows what is the truth and he is going to put that into your brain. There is no room for discussion. If you start arguing with your teacher that, look, you are telling us that consumers maximize utility, but when I go to the store and I don't have a utility function, I don't take first order partial derivatives, I don't solve a system of n by n simultaneous nonlinear equations to compute that, and substitute the budget constraint, and I come up with, I have to buy 17 ounces of tomatoes today. I never do this. So the teacher will say, no, you do this. This is the theory, this is how consumers behave. So you deny your own experience, you deny your own observation, that this old lady, she cannot do calculus, so obviously she is not maximizing a multivariate function. Budget constraints, she is substituting, she just made a mistake in arithmetic, she couldn't add 5 rupees and 7 rupees, and you are telling us that she is solving advanced calculus questions and substituting the budget constraints. But yes, we deny all that because we are in sajda to the Western knowledge. If Samuelson says so, it must be so. I reject my experience of my heart, my own experience, and I say, yes, amanna bi Samuelson. He says this, it must be true. So, I think we are running out of...
Sir, I really wish we had more time. I really want to continue with this.
We can do this later, more, inshallah. So, so one concept that has been fed to us, which I skipped over, is that concept of secular knowledge, that there is a type of knowledge which deen does not have anything to do with. This is a misconception. Deen plays a role in all the domains of knowledge. The way that this trick has been done, you see, there is a very clever, the magicians in front of Pharaoh, they raised these huge snakes, they deceived the people. So the Western education also deceives our mind. They never mention, you see, if somebody told you that the purpose of life is to earn money, you would reject it. But they make you believe this without actually ever telling you this. And similarly, they tell you that deen doesn't have anything to do with knowledge by a trick. And the trick is that they teach you theory without ever teaching its application. And this divide, this is wrong. In my own course, which I have developed, which is called Intro Statistics and Islamic Approach, I have said that you cannot understand a theory until you apply it to a real world problem. So I say, okay, take the most basic concepts of statistics like mean, median, mode, and tell me where in the real world, in a real problem, not artificial. You see, what they do is they fake they use fake real world. They use data from the real world, but it's not a genuine real world problem. So let's take a genuine real world problem and try to solve it. And when would these concepts be useful? Whenever you try to do that, you find that moral, ethical issues come in. That should I do this research for the tax people? Then you have to ask, is taxation just? Should I be party to this research or not? So whenever you take anything, whether you take computer science or biology, and you apply it to the real world, then always ethical and moral issues will arise. But in the West, they teach you how to build an atom bomb, but they never teach you whether it is permissible to kill innocent civilians. And by this separation, they create the illusion that, this is theory, you're just studying 2 + 2 = 4. What does religion have to do with this? Well, it depends on how you're going to use this, where you're going to use this. So this meaningless education, which, see, I say that the litmus test for knowledge, and this is the difference between Islamic knowledge and Western knowledge. Knowledge is what teaches you how to live. This is the key. If it has an impact on your life, if it tells you how to behave, that is knowledge. If it is all about X, Y, Z and has no impact on your life, then it is useless knowledge. And Islam differentiates between useless knowledge and useful knowledge. The purpose of a Western education is to turn you into a machine part which will be used for the production of wealth. So Western education never asks you who you are, what you can be, what are the potentials that are inside you, in which every individual is different. Because our goal is not to deal with you as an individual. Our goal is to turn you into a standardized part, and you will keep on working until you become old, and then we will just replace you with another suitable standardized part. And so this is the purpose of education. It's to put all people into one mold. As opposed to this, in a Turkish madrasa, there is a sign which says that here no fish will be forced to fly and no bird will be forced to swim. So this is a very clear expression of how the Islamic education is about developing the inner capabilities of every individual along the lines in which he or she is equipped. So we have been misled about what is development. This modern education used to be about building character and personality, even in the West, in the early 20th century, but through a long process this was dropped out, and now it's purely technical. You learn chemistry, physics, biology, but you never learn what it means to be a human being. So you are being turned into human resources and you never learn how to be a human being. Think about all of the courses you have been received, all of the education, years and years, and no one ever taught you what it means to be a human being. And this is what Islam is about. And today, because we want to become parts of this machine and earn money, and we think that's the goal of life, so we say, well, Islamic teachings have no value. It doesn't teach us how to earn money. So it's of no value. That's why we are not looking there. Quran and Hadith cannot guide us in terms of how we can make the maximum amount of money. Many students have come to me with this exact question, that you are a very experienced educator. Tell us which course we should choose where we will make the maximum amount of money. So this is the goal of education, to make the maximum amount of money. This has nothing to do with Islam. And when I tried to divert them, they did not accept. So the antidote to all of these poisons that we have swallowed is Islam. Islam has the same power today to launch a revolution. If we can learn how to be human beings, we can change the world. It teaches us how to live our lives, and it gives us hearts which are, it teaches us how to be compassionate, rahmatul lil alameen, which is not taught in the Western education. In fact, the opposite is true. There is a book by David Halberstam called the brightest and the best, which is basically devoted to how the graduates of the finest schools in the USA turned Vietnam into killing fields. They killed millions of innocents, and they were doing all these calculations on cost-benefit analysis using the techniques of business school efficiency management, which you are being taught. No emotions involved. You just maximize profits. The bottom line is everything. How many people die? The book, there's a movie, Tigers. You should watch that. It's about how Nestle operates. It has a Pakistani hero. It's actually in Urdu. It's about how this firm knowingly sells baby powder, milk powder, knowing that hundreds, thousands of babies will die. They are killing babies for profits. And this is business school standard. Your bottom line is good. So the solution lies in reversing the business model which you are currently being taught, which is currently being taught at Harvard. What you are taught is that you should serve mankind in order to make profits. Islam teaches us that you make profits in order to serve. Yani, suppose that we were to be, and I've seen this, yani, in an excess of, iman, we say that, okay, I'm going to distribute everything for free. There's a book that I saw. The publisher said that, this is a good book and it should reach everybody, so I'm going to make it free. This book never made circulation because it's too difficult. Nobody wants to sell it, nobody wants to hold it. So you have to have, and the stocks diminish and you have limited funds. So make jaiz profits, but the profits is not your intention from doing the business. You use the profits in order to be able to continue the business. You feed your employees so that they work happily. You earn your own return so that you can also participate. But the niyyah is not all of this. This is all a side product. The niyyah is to serve the people. So when you have service as your bottom line, your accounting conventions will change. If you have a stock of spoiled product and you say, okay, this will give the people a stomach ache, but nobody will know. So I will make more profit. So you sell it because bottom line is good. But if you have service in mind, then you say, no, this is against my principles. You throw it and you suffer the loss. You say, okay, this is against my purpose. So basically service should be your purpose, but Islam is not content with this service. It says that service should not be done for earning praise, for earning gratitude, for anything except for the love of Allah. So this purification, that our engagement with the world is meant for purifying our own soul. This is the crucial thing. So even the Muslims today, we are mistaken. We think that serving the poor is the goal. Actually, that's not the goal. Allah, as the Jews said, that should we feed the poor? When Allah Ta'ala wanted to, He could have fed Himself. Of course Allah Ta'ala can feed the poor. But the goal of your feeding the poor is to create love, to soften your heart, to create love in the society, harmony in the society. And when you mistakenly think that it is feeding of the poor, then you say, okay, impose taxes on the rich and give it to the poor. And this is, many Muslims think that this is the way to do it. But actually, when you fully take away from the rich, they will both resist it, and they are powerful. They will find ways to resist it. They will hide their taxes, and they will do other sorts of maneuvers. And also, this will create a divide in the society between the haves and the have-nots, which is what we also see. Whereas Islam does something quite different. It says that it says to create harmony in the society, to create love in the hearts, and this is by asking the rich to have compassion for the poor and to give what they hold more than their needs. So if in a society somebody has more than what he needs, he should give to the one who doesn't have, and this will create harmony and integrate the society. So the Riyasate Madina does not exist out there, it exists in our hearts. And if enough people change their hearts, that is what will cause the Riyasate Madina to come into existence. And how do we change the hearts? This is, in this, Islam is unique in that everybody else says that, okay, in order to achieve spiritual development, you have to have Rabbaniyat. You should go and retire into the caves and the jungles and meditate, and then you will achieve spiritual development. And then, if you want, you can go into the world and do good things. But Islam says that actually the struggle with the world, the struggle to implement the orders of Allah is the means to spiritual development. So, we have a bottom-up approach. Every person struggles to become, shape himself according to the order of Allah. And this effort transforms the society eventually. And it is in the process of the struggle that we will be guided. Knowledge will be achieved. Islam is a very active learning approach. When I was teaching economics at Islamic University, I said to the students, Islam is not about any studying theories. Go out there. There's 2 slums nearby, Kachi Bastis. You go and study their problems and find out how you can solve them. So it's very action oriented. Then when you study, then you will understand what poverty is about. So most fundamental to this is changing the methodology of education. We have to have Ahya Ulumuddin. We have to understand, once we clarify, you see, our religion, the education we currently receiving is meaningless. To have a meaningful education, we have to understand, we have to discuss, we have to decide what is the purpose of our lives. And the difference between Islamic education and Western education is that I'm not going to force feed you. I'm not going to say, this is your purpose, you better take it. Even in the business, this mission vision, this is a joke. I write down a mission and a vision and I say, okay, here's your mission and here's your vision. What do you mean? My mission and my vision must come from inside me. Yes, it is possible, and there is something we can all sit together and we can say, is there something we can collectively work together for? And if we can find something, this will create a mission and a vision which can have some meaning. But similarly, the purpose of life, oh, here's your purpose of life. That's nonsense. Everybody must look for their own. What was I created for? For this you should look for guidance. You have been given capabilities, and Allah Ta'ala has said that if you take one life, it is like you have taken the life of the entire planet. This is no joke. Allah Ta'ala has put inside every human being the potential for excellence which is far beyond the stars. You can reach, to heights which are unimaginable, and every person is unique, and every person has that potential. But if you spend your life in the search for money, you will never achieve this potential. So one thing, I cannot tell you what the purpose of your life is, but I can tell you for sure that it is not making money. So today Islam is still complete and sufficient for our guidance, and today it still has the same power to launch a revolution that it did 1400 years ago. Today all over the world there is darkness. Nobody knows what it means to be a human being anymore. The values that are being spread as so-called human values, they are complete nonsense. They have nothing to do with reality. Islam only has the template, and today we only know it by our lips, and maybe sometimes we've read it. We don't have Islam in our hearts, we don't have Islam in our souls, we don't have Islam in our brains, we don't even know what the requirements of Islam are. And Islam has same revolutionary potential today that it did 1400 years ago. But the problem, and this is the last slide, is that we say that, the environment is so powerful, so strongly against us. So there is this beautiful poem that I read when I was in child that talks about how the clouds were all there, and the earth was parched and cracked, and there was enormous amount of miles and miles and miles of earth which are dry and cracked. So one drop is thinking, I will give up my everything, and there's the need will not be, it will not even make any difference. So so one drop says, okay, I'm going to do it. I will give my all, even though I know that it doesn't make a difference. I will do whatever is in my power. So the first drop started. Looking at his courage, 10 or 12 other drops followed, and then one other had more followers, and ultimately the whole rain came down, and the whole ground was fulfilled. And so exactly like this, the circumstances seem impossible, but inside every human being Allah Ta'ala has put incredible amount of power, and it is not, Allah Ta'ala has not asked us to succeed. He has only asked us to struggle, and everybody can struggle. So we do whatever is in our part, as like the bird said when it was carrying a drop of water to the fire in which Ibrahim alayhi salam was being burnt, that yes, I know that this drop is nothing compared to the fire, but on the day of judgment I will be able to answer Allah that what were you doing when my friend was being burned? I was doing whatever I was able to do. So this is the spirit which Islam asks of all of us, that in Tabligh we were told that think that you are the last Muslim alive, and it is your job to revive Islam and take that responsibility on your shoulder. It's only my job. Everybody else, if they help, that's very good for that I should be grateful to them. But today we are thinking that it's everybody else's job to fix the world and ours to enjoy, and that's the central problem. So in Riyasate, this is the last slide. The Riyasate Madina is built on love. It is built on harmony. It's built on togetherness. If our hearts are united, then we can change the world. But this happens one by one, person by person. And so we have to remove the bad things. This is called tazkiyah. The hatred, the things that are being spread today about which divide us and which say, okay, he is not Muslim, he is kafir. This is actually 5th generation warfare, which is done by taking all the divisions and highlighting them and feeding both. That, like we saw that the Shia and the Sunnis are being made to fight, and the Barelvis and the Deobandis and the Salafis, every single, the secular moderns and the religious people, they are all brothers. And the teaching of Islam is that we should is that of rahmatul lil alameen, mercy to all mankind. The Prophet himself was so grieved about the fate of the kuffar that Allah Ta'ala had to console him. His heart was full of sorrow and pain. So today, if we can overcome this, Allah Ta'ala says, if you are united, you will overcome all. But if you are divided, then everybody will gain victory over you. So the effort is being made to divide us against ourselves. And if we can resist this, if we can counteract this, that is the path to the Riyasate Madina.